Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Sport This Week video. And in today's video, I've got tennis news, basketball news, baseball news, rugby news, ice hockey news, NFL news, UFC news, boxing news, football news, cricket news, and Formula One news. If you are new around here though and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do need like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, gonna start off with the tennis news this week, where there's the continuation of the Guadalajara Open, where Pegula won 2-0 versus Sakari to win the women's singles Guadalajara Open. It was also the Swiss indoors Basel, where Alcaraz won 2-1 versus Draper. It was also the Vienna Open, where Tsitsipas won 2-0 versus Novak. Medvedev won 2-0 versus Basilashvili. Alcaraz won 2-0 versus Van der Zandschulp. Medvedev won 2-0 versus TM. Tsitsipas lost 2-1 versus Koric. Medvedev won 2-0 versus Sinner. Alcaraz won 2-0 versus Carreno Busta. Medvedev won 2-0 versus Dimitrov. Alcaraz lost 2-0 versus Auger-Aliassime. Medvedev won 2-1 versus Shapovalov to win the men's singles Vienna Open. And Auger-Aliassime won 2-0 versus Rune to win the men's singles Swiss indoors Basel. And yeah, that is it for the tennis news. Moving on to the basketball news now. Warriors won 130 to 125 versus Kings. Heat lost 98 to 90 versus Raptors. Celtics lost 120 to 102 versus Bulls. Warriors lost 134 to 105 versus Suns. Lakers lost 110 to 99 versus Nuggets. Heat won 119 to 98 versus Blazers. Warriors won 123 to 110 versus Heat. Celtics lost 132 to 123 versus Cavaliers. Lakers lost 111 to 102 versus Timberwolves. Heat won 119 to 113 versus Kings. Warriors lost 120 to 113 versus Hornets. Warriors lost 128 to 114 versus Pistons. And Celtics won 112 to 94 versus Wizards. And yeah, that is all the basketball news. Moving on to the baseball news now, where it is now, well, after this first game where Astros won 6-5 versus the Yankees, it is now the final of the MLB. And so we'll be keeping you updated with that. Astros versus Phillies, and so far Astros won 6-5 versus Phillies, and Astros won 5-2 versus Phillies. So yes, Astro currently with a 2-0 lead. We'll see how things continue with that. Moving on to the rugby news. New Zealand won 38 to 31 versus Japan. England won 94 to 4 versus Greece, and Australia won 16 to 15 versus Scotland. And yeah, that is all the rugby news. Moving on to the ice hockey news now. Canadians lost 3-1 versus Wild. Bruins won 3-1 versus Stars. Red Wings lost 6-2 versus Devils. Bruins won 5-1 versus Red Wings. Canadians won 3-2 versus Sabres. Maple Leafs lost 4-3 versus Sharks. Bruins won 4-0 versus Blue Jackets. Red Wings won 2-1 versus Wild. Maple Leafs lost 4-2 versus Kings. Canadians won 7-4 versus Blues. Canucks are trading for Bear and Peterson for a 2023 5th round pick, and Dubnyk has retired. And sorry if you can hear any background noise. But yeah, and moving on away from the ice hockey news, moving on to the NFL news now. Dolphins won 16 to 10 versus Steelers. Patriots lost 33 to 14 versus Bears. Buccaneers lost 27 to 22 versus Ravens. Dolphins won 31 to 27 versus Lions. Patriots won 22 to 17 versus Jets. Erlinger was named a Week 8 starter. Hall suffered a torn ACL. Jackson out for the season. Jets trading for Robinson. Eagles trading for Quinn. Chase wasn't expected for Week 8. Barrett is out for the season. Willis was in line to start. Rams lost 31-14 versus 49ers, and that is all the NFL news. Moving on to the football news now. Carrick is the new Middlesbrough manager. West Ham won 2-0 versus Bournemouth. Sassuolo won 2-1 versus Verona. Chelsea won 2-1 versus Salzburg. Sevilla won 3-0 versus Copenhagen. Benfica won 4-3 versus Juventus. Celtics drew 1-1 versus Shakhtar. Milan won 4-0 versus Dynamo Zagreb. Dortmund drew 0-0 versus Man City. Leipzig won 3-2 versus Real Madrid. PSG won 7-2 versus Haifa. Corberan is the new West Brom manager. Porto won 4-0 versus Bruges. Inter won 4-0 versus Plzen. Liverpool won 3-0 versus Ajax. Atletico Madrid drew 2-2 versus Leverkusen. Bayern won 3-0 versus Barcelona. Frankfurt won 2-1 versus Marseille. Napoli won 3-0 versus Rangers. Spurs drew 1-1 versus Sporting. Lazio won 2-1 versus Midtjylland. Zurich won 2-1 versus Bodo Glimt. PSV won 2-0 versus Arsenal. Fenerbahce drew 3-3 versus Rennes. Larnaca drew 3-3 versus Dynamo Kiev. Betis won 1-0 versus Ludogorets. Union SG won 2-0 versus Malmo. Union Berlin won 1-0 versus Braga. Sturm won 1-0 versus Feyenoord. Manu won 3-0 versus Sheriff. Sociedad won 2-0 versus Ammonia. Roma won 2-1 versus HJK. Freiburg drew 1-1 versus Olympiacos. Nantes won 2-1 versus Qarabag. Cervena Zvezda won 2-1 versus Trabzonspor. Ferencvaros drew 1-1 versus Monaco. Fiorentina won 2-1 versus Istanbul Başakşehir. Anderlecht drew 2-2 versus FCSB. Villarreal drew 2-2 versus Beersheva. Austria Vienna drew 1-1 versus Lech. Cologne won 1-0 versus Slovakia. Nice won 2-1 versus Partizan. AZ won 2-1 versus Vaduz. Hearts won 2-1 versus RFS. West Ham won 1-0 versus Silkeborg. Dnipro won 1-0 versus Apollon. Djurgården won 3-2 versus Molde. Shamrock drew 1-1 versus Ghent. Slavia Prague won 1-0 versus Balakani. Sivasspor won 3-0 versus CFR Cluj. Basel drew 2-2 versus Zalgiris. Slovan Bratislava won 2-0 versus Pionik. And Bayern won 6-2 versus Mainz. Napoli won 4-0 versus Sassuolo. Corny, Chapman and Aluko are in the WSL Hall of Fame. Spurs won 3-2 versus Bournemouth. Brentford drew 1-1 versus Wolves. Brighton won 4-1 versus Chelsea. Palace won 1-0 versus Southampton. Newcastle won 4-0 versus Villa. Man City won 1-0 versus Leicester. Fulham drew 0-0 versus Everton. Leeds won 2-1 versus Liverpool. Dortmund won 2-1 versus Frankfurt. Barcelona won 1-0 versus Valencia. Arsenal won 5-0 versus Forest. Man U won 1-0 versus West Ham. Union Berlin won 2-1 versus Mönchengladbach. Arsenal won 3-1 versus West Ham. Lyon won 1-0 versus Lille. And Betis won 2-0 versus Sociedad. And yes, that is all the football news. Moving on to the cricket news now. Zimbabwe had a no contest versus South Africa. Australia won by 7 wickets versus Sri Lanka. Ireland won by 5 runs versus England. South Africa won by 104 runs versus Bangladesh. New Zealand won by 65 runs versus Sri Lanka. Bangladesh won by 3 runs versus Zimbabwe. South Africa won by 5 wickets versus India, and India won by 56 runs versus Netherlands. And yes, that is all the cricket news. Moving on to the boxing news now. Eubank versus Farrell, Watson, Williams and Wildheart, who we've had on the channel luckily, will all fight on the 25th of November, so best of luck to Wildheart. Riley versus McGugan. Chima, who we've also had on the channel versus Ellison. Smith and Kilgannon will fight on the 12th of November, so best of luck to Chima as well. Wet has joined Happy Punch. Shiraz will fight on the 12th of November. No, Shiraz McCann versus Ham. Noakes versus McCord. O'Leary versus Mongangela. Fletcher and Liston Ali will fight on the 26th of November. Lopez will fight Pedraza on the 10th of December. Anderson versus Zayas. Davis, Carrington and Looker will fight on the 10th of December. Munguia will fight Korea on the 19th of November. Courtney won via decision versus Hatchbold. Hedges won via decision versus Makovec. Fisher won via TK in round 1 versus Musil. Reynolds won by decision versus Clavero. Ellison won by decision versus Whittaker Hart to remain Central Area Light Heavyweight Champion. Scotney won by unanimous decision versus Romero to become EBU European Super Bantamweight Champion. Cully won via TKO in round 1 versus Belmedi to... Oh, just that, yep. Martinez won via TKO in round 4 versus Gill to become EBU European Featherweight Champion. That was a great fight. I didn't predict that right. I believe I said Gill would win that, but yeah, great fight for Martinez. Taylor won by unanimous decision versus Karabajal to remain IBF, WBA, WBC and WBO World Lightweight Champion, which I did predict right. Can't remember how I predicted it to end, but I did predict that Taylor would win. Hall won by unanimous decision versus Bell. Avila won by unanimous decision versus Dr. Mike. Paul won by unanimous decision versus Silver, which I did predict Paul to win. I believe I said a knockout, but I still said Paul would win, and a lot of people didn't, and so fair play to Paul. Jake Paul managed to get the knockdown in the final round, which from what I've heard, I haven't really seen the fight, from what I heard, that was one of the deciding factors in him getting the win, so yeah, big win for him. Mucina won via split decision versus Udica to become IBF World Flyweight Champion, which I didn't predict right. Zepeda won via unanimous decision versus Diaz, which I did predict Zepeda to win. Lomachenko won via unanimous decision versus Ortiz, which I did predict Lomachenko to win. So overall, not too bad of predictions week for me, and that is all the boxing news as well. Moving on to UFC news. Rodriguez will fight Lemos on the 5th of November. Figueiredo will fight Moreno on the 4th for the fourth time on the 21st of January. Mitchell will fight Tapura on the 10th of December. Rosas Jr. will fight Perrin on the 10th of December. Griffin won via decision versus Means. Allen won via KO in round 2 versus Cater, and that is all the UFC news. Moving on to the final sport, which is the Formula 1 news. And so Sabre become Audi for from 2026, F1 to race in Mexico through to 2025. Alonso reinstated to P7 at US Grand Prix. It was the Mexico Grand Prix. Verstappen was on pole, Russell started second, and Hamilton started third. In the end, Verstappen won, breaking the record for most wins in a season. Hamilton came second, and Perez came third, with Alonso and Suonda not finishing. So yeah, big congrats to Verstappen breaking a record and continuing his win streak. And yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.